These millennials are so annoying. They're always talking about how we jump jobs and live on our phones, but they're the ones posting blurry photos on Facebook and saying adulting is hard. My Gen Z new hire asked if a 90-minute task was too demanding. 90 minutes I used to work 90-hour weeks fueled by coffee and the fear of being laid off. They just don't get it. Do these thoughts sound familiar? Maybe a little too familiar. For years, the workplace has felt like a battleground for a quiet culture war between its two biggest players, millennials and Gen Z. But what if the person you're stereotyping is looking right back at you thinking the exact same thing? Today, we're flipping the table. We're going to look at each generation through the other's eyes and then run those perceptions through a reality check powered by hard data. Want to see how these perceptions are creating major new trends in the workplace? Let's dive in. One, what millennials think of Gen Z, the difficult generation. Let's start with the view from the millennial manager's desk. If you've ever felt like your younger colleagues are speaking a different language, you're not alone. A flood of recent surveys paints a pretty dramatic picture. One from Resume Builder found that a staggering 74% of managers find Gen Z more difficult to work with than other generations. The complaints often sound like a broken record. They lack crucial soft skills. They're impatient, they're overly demanding, and they seem to think professional attire is a band t-shirt and a pair of Vans. The stories from the trenches are even more telling. Managers describe Gen Z employees who call out of work for a minor stomach ache 10 minutes before their shift, or who seem genuinely shocked when they're fired after 9 warnings for being late. One manager recounted how a new hire, when corrected, responded that the manager's vibes were off, and she didn't want to hear it. This isn't just a communication gap. To many millennials, it feels like a fundamental misunderstanding of professional norms. So, what's going on here? Is Gen Z truly a generation of entitled troublemakers? The analysis points to something far more complex. First, there's the undeniable pandemic effect. Many Gen Zers began their careers remotely missing out on the subtle in-person learning that teaches you the unwritten rules of office life, like how to take constructive feedback, navigate a team meeting, or even just make small talk by the coffee machine. This has led to what some have called learned helplessness, where their first instinct when facing a problem isn't to experiment or Google a solution, but to immediately ask for help. It's less a character flaw and more of a skills gap created by a historic disruption. But here's the kicker. A 2024 survey from Resume Genius revealed that 45% of HR professionals think Gen Z is the most difficult generation to manage. And many of those respondents were Gen Z themselves. This suggests the issue isn't purely generational. It's about professional maturity. When Gen Zers get promoted, they suddenly become responsible for deadlines and team performance, and their perspective on their peers' behavior often shifts. Suddenly setting boundaries can look a lot like not being a team player. 2, what Gen Z thinks of millennials, the cringe generation. Now let's flip the script. What happens when Gen Z looks back across the open plan office at their millennial managers? Well, it's not always a pretty picture. Scour forums like Reddit or TikTok, and you'll find a consistent theme. Gen Z often finds millennial workplace culture, well, a little cringe. They talk about the corporate faux personality, that overly polished, sanitized way of talking, and Slack messages packed with slightly off emojis and exclamation points that feels deeply inauthentic. They see millennials clinging to old platforms like Facebook and constantly referencing back in our day, a phrase that makes Gen Z feel like their own very real struggles are being dismissed. Another major complaint, millennials are seen as workaholics who romanticized hustle culture, worked themselves into a state of perpetual burnout, and now won't stop complaining about being tired. To Gen Z, who prioritizes work-life balance as a survival strategy, this looks like a self-inflicted wound they have no intention of repeating. They see millennials eating dinner at their desks and taking 0 vacation days and don't see ambition. They see a recipe for exhaustion. And perhaps the sharpest critique is reserved for millennial managers. Gen Z often feels that many were promoted into leadership before they were ready, lacking the skills to actually lead. They describe managers who feign empathy, but are ultimately self-serving, throwing their team under the bus the second their own career goals are threatened. As one Gen Z user put it, millennials are all on board with fair values and ethical delivery until it ceases to benefit them. The analysis here points to a clash of lived experiences. Gen Z, as digital natives, are confident in their ability to find new, more efficient ways of doing things, which can lead them to see established millennial processes as simply outdated. Meanwhile, millennials' stories of hardship aren't meant to invalidate Gen Z. They're a reflection of their own traumatic entry into the workforce during the Great Recession, burdened by historic student debt. But without that shared context, the message gets lost in translation, and the gap widens. 3. Stereotypes versus reality. Let's look at the data. All right, we've heard the perceptions. Now let's bring in the facts. It's time to put these stereotypes on trial. First up, Gen Z is lazy and lacks perseverance. This is probably the biggest misunderstanding. The reality is that Gen Z isn't lazy. They are pathologically efficient. They were raised on the internet, a world that rewards finding the fastest, smartest way to get from point A to point B. They see performative work like staying late just to be seen or printing unnecessary documents as a waste of time. But lazy consider this. A 2025 study found that nearly half of Gen Z, 48%, have a side hustle. That's more than any other generation. They're pulling in an average of $958 a month from these gigs, and a stunning 55% intend to leave their traditional job to pursue their side hustle full-time. That's not laziness, that's ambition redirected. Next stereotype, millennials are conservative, afraid of change, and bad with tech. This one is just factually wrong. Millennials are the generation that lived through the most explosive technological revolution in modern history. They went from dial-up to broadband, from flip phones to iPhones, from MySpace to everything else. Their caution isn't fear of change, it's the wisdom that comes from having seen a dozen revolutionary platforms die in 3 years. And here's the proof they're still on the cutting edge. A 2025 McKinsey report found that millennials are leading Gen Z in workplace AI adoption. 62% of millennials claim advanced AI familiarity, compared to just 50% of Gen Z. They are the ones driving AI's strategic use in companies today, with millennial founders like Sam Altman of OpenAI leading the charge. Third stereotype, Gen Z lacks respect for superiors. This isn't about disrespect, it's about a different definition of respect. Gen Z doesn't see a boss, they see a coach or a mentor. Authority isn't granted by a title on an org chart, it's earned through transparency, authenticity, and competence. They show respect not by saying yes, sir, but by delivering excellent work and engaging in direct, honest dialogue. They expect their leaders to be human, to admit mistakes, and to create an environment of psychological safety. In fact, 77% of Gen Z say it's important to work for a company whose values align with their own, proving that for them, respect is tied to integrity, not hierarchy. And finally, millennials just complain all the time. The complaining is actually a direct symptom of a well-documented crisis, millennial burnout. This is the generation that graduated into a historic recession, took on mountains of student debt, and was told to hustle their way to a stability that never fully materialized. According to Deloitte's 2025 survey, financial insecurity is skyrocketing for them. 46% feel insecure now, up from 32% just a year ago. Their stress is real, it is systemic, and what sounds like complaining is often just a desperate release valve for a generation that feels squeezed from all sides, trying to manage their own careers while also mentoring the next generation. 4. Learning to wear each other's glasses. So how do we bridge this gap? Let's try a quick thought experiment. It's an exercise in empathy. Millennials, imagine this, you're 22 again, but it's today. You're graduating with a degree that cost a fortune, and you're watching generative AI automate the very entry-level jobs you were counting on, a fear shared by 61% of your generation. Your first day at work might be from your childhood bedroom over Zoom, with no one to show you the ropes and no low-stakes environment to learn basic office etiquette. In that world, wouldn't you also demand crystal clear expectations, flexibility, and a manager who actively coaches you instead of just managing you? Now, Gen Z, your turn. Imagine you were born in 1985. You survived the 2008 crash by embracing hustle culture because it was the only way to get ahead. Now you're 35, maybe with a family and a mortgage, and you're sandwiched between the demands of your boomer boss and your Gen Z team. You're burnt out, financially stressed, and trying to keep up with technology that seems to change every 6 months. Would your priorities, your communication style, and your definition of a hard day's work be a little different? Sometimes empathy is just a matter of perspective. It's about recognizing that the other person's reality is shaped by a journey you haven't walked. 5. The common ground in the future of work. When you strip away the stereotypes and the misinterpretations, you find something remarkable. Gen Z and Millennials aren't that different where it counts. Both generations are actively redefining success, moving away from the idea of simply climbing the corporate ladder. A 2025 Deloitte survey found that only 6% of either generation sees reaching a top leadership position as their primary goal. What do they want instead? The same things. They want meaningful work that aligns with their values. They want to learn and grow with clear development opportunities. They want to be respected for their contributions. And more than anything, they want a healthy work-life balance that allows them to thrive both in and out of the office. The destination is the same. They're just taking different paths to get there. This shared vision is already shaping the future of work. We're seeing the rise of empathy-driven leadership, where managers are expected to be coaches and mentors, not just taskmasters. Companies are realizing the need for explicit intergenerational training to bridge communication gaps and leverage the unique strengths of each cohort. And workplace norms are evolving to accommodate these diverse values, moving away from rigid one-size-fits-all structures toward more flexible human-centric models. Instead of pointing fingers at the other's choice of path, maybe it's time to focus on the shared destination and build that future together. Conclusion. So are there real differences between Gen Z and Millennials? Absolutely. But most of the conflict comes from a simple, massive misunderstanding. One generation's strategic boundary setting is seen as another's laziness. One generation's experienced caution is seen as another's resistance to change. We're judging each other's highlight reels and behind-the-scenes footage with completely different rulebooks, but what if we started looking for the good? Let's try it right now. What's one genuinely good thing you've seen in the other generation at work that people might not know about? Maybe it's a millennial manager who fiercely protected their team from burnout, or a Gen Z colleague whose tech wizardry saved a project. Comment below with your positive experiences. Let's prove that collaboration is more powerful than caricature. If you found this analysis helpful, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to GENSHIFT. We're dedicated to unpacking the fascinating, frustrating, and funny dynamics of the modern workplace. Join us next time as we explore another piece of the puzzle.